Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to work in Meine Reise, durch, Afrika. If you're new to the channel, we are doing a full color along of every page in this book. Now, originally in my plans video, I said I was going to do this page. And, well, in true Jazzydoodledesign form, I changed my mind, and I've decided, because you guys want me to work with Inktense, I have a different idea for that other page that I feel like would work better with a different medium, and so I'm going to be doing this page. So grab your Inktense pencils and join me, will ya? Here are the Inktense pencils that we'll use in today's project. Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. Today we're going to work with the Inktense, and I just want to point out a couple of things if you are new to the channel. Whenever I'm talking, there'll be a little talking head bobble up in one of the corners to indicate that I'm chatting. That way, if I set you to music at some point, you know when to pop back in case you don't like my music and you mute it. Also, I film everything on 2x speed. I just find that this way, it doesn't take too long for me to do voiceovers, and yet you can, by clicking in the gear icon below the video, you can change the speed to half speed, and that way you can watch it in real time. So anyway, what we're going to do here with this Inktense is I am just laying down each of these colors kind of in a gradient. We're going to go from darkest up at the top of the sky to the lightest down at the bottom. Now with Inktense, because it's almost like a watercolor and it'll spread a little bit, you do not have to color every single piece like you do with colored pencil. That being said, it really depends on how vibrant you want it to be and how, if you want it to look more washed out and watercolor-like, you want to leave a little bit of space and don't push too hard on your Inktense pencil. If you want it to be more vibrant or more opaque, then you want to take the time to go ahead and go over all the areas. Now, with Inktense, you're going to find that I will work in layers a little bit to get the amount of vibrancy you see on the final project. But I do take the time to pretty much go over the entire thing. I feel like it gives a nice, consistent result. But it, like I said, it really depends on what you want the outcome to be. Now, if you look at the pencil tip while I'm working, it's pretty blunt. Most of the time, I don't sharpen my Inktense pencils. I find keeping them a little on the dull side allows me to lay down color and not get any like harsh marks that are hard to dissolve with the water. Now, you don't have to use water. You can use alcohol, or you can use your Tombow blending pencil. You can use a Copic blending marker. I guess Tombow is technically a blending marker, but any of those things will also activate your Inktense. I've even used watercolor to activate the Inktense, and that gives it a very unique look as well. And I'll link to where I show that up in the corner here. But what you're seeing right now is I've got my layers down. Now I'm going to go in with my water brush, and I'm going to start with my lightest color. And as I move up, you'll see me kind of tapping off. Sometimes it's because I have a little too much water, and sometimes it's because I don't want to drag that color up into the next color, or I feel like there's a little too much color. So here I just kind of, you'll see where it kind of puddles there. I don't want to leave those puddles there because once this ink dries, it will dry permanent. And so if you leave a little puddle there, you're going to have a pool of color. And so that's where you'll see me kind of put my brush back in that little puddle and kind of tap it back off. Now, the key to this is you just want to be mindful of where your brush is. So you can kind of go from the dark to the light, but if you do, you're going to drag that darker color into your lighter color and it can overpower it. So you just got to be mindful of that. So generally speaking, I like to go light to dark, but a lot of it depends, again, on the look you're going for. Now, you should be mindful to not, like here I got a little bit of the blue in where those palm trees are. It's going to be hard to overcome that blue with a green. So you need to be careful of that. But, I'm an impatient girl, so these things happen. But take your time here, and because this ink is permanent, you can't go back in and just wash over it with your water brush and kind of lift it off like you can watercolor. Now, that being said, these ink tints are extremely pigmented. It only takes a little tiny bit to get color. So if you don't activate all of your pigment, so let's say in the sky there, I didn't activate any, maybe just a tiny bit. If I put water on it later, that part that is not activated will activate. Now, once it's been thoroughly activated, I have never had it lift back up. And I will link to a video where I go into all kinds of details and I show you the tests that I did and all of that to talk about the permanency and just tips and tricks on how to use ink tints. So I will make sure to put that in the description box below, as well as I'll try and put a little video in here. Let me jot the time down so I remember to do it. So basically, you're going to see me kind of work like I would with colored pencil. I put my lighter color in, and then I'm laying down the darker color where I want it. Now, in this case, I only use 2 colors because it's such a small little thing. So I use my dark and my light. Now, you can just put in your dark first and then your light. It really doesn't matter in this particular example. The one thing while I'm thinking about it that I'm going to tell you is, see how I'm tapping off on that paper towel and it's a single layer? Here's the problem. When you do that, you're actually picking up ink tints onto your brush, and then you're tapping it off on that paper towel. Well, guess what? One single layer of paper towel bleeds through. And so I got little speckles of color on my page next door from me only having a single layer there and tapping off. So just be cautious of that. You can use several layers of paper towel. You could put a piece of paper there to protect it and then put your paper towel on that. I've been known to use a cloth, like a microfiber cloth. But I just want you to be aware because, this is how we learn. And it will be interesting to see how I overcome that because the speckles are literally on the fox's face. So that might be the page that I decide to color with gouache. So we'll see. But I'm not worried about it. You guys, you can't live your life with your coloring books intimidated. We're all going to make mistakes, and that's how we learn. And I'm going to figure it out when the time comes because we're coloring every page in this book. So I can't even just cheat and not do that page. But basically here, I'm going to go in with this saddle brown, and I just want these buildings to have a little variance of color, but I don't want it to be too stark. So you're going to see here that I'm using kind of this tan brown color, and then the rest of them will be, in the reddish brown color. Now, if you catch a mistake, if you saw me kind of flick my finger there, I had kind of went out of the lines a little bit. And so I went back in with my finger and I kind of wiped it away. If you're quick enough, sometimes you can get away with that. It depends on if it seeps into the paper before you are able to wipe it away. And obviously, if it dries, then also how dark the color is. This is a lighter color, that light brown, so I had a little more success with it than if I would have been using that dark indigo blue. But this is going to be the main color here of the red. Now, spoiler alert, I will do 2 layers of each of these colors over the entire thing. I actually color the entire picture, and then I make an assessment in my mind of, is it vibrant enough? Do I, what do I want to change? Do I want to add a different color? Because you could layer a different color over it, and you're going to see me do that with the tint. But I say this because if you watch the entire color along, you'll see that. And one of the things I will caution you about is if you decide to do 2 layers, you absolutely have to wait until the first layer is bone dry. And one of the ways you can tell if something is completely dry is if you put your hand on it and it feels cool to the touch, it's still wet. But too oftentimes, the reason that people have trouble with mediums like watercolor, super tips, Tombows, Inktense, things like that, it's not the medium that bleeds through. It is the moisture. So it's the water. When the paper gets saturated, that's when whatever pigment is on top, whether it's Tombow, super tips, Inktense, Neocolor, it doesn't matter. That is what is going to cause your bleed through. So if you are super careful with the water, you can use darn near any medium on any paper. But you have to be aware of that. And you have to accept that it is risky. Now, I haven't found Rita Berman's paper to be temperamental that way. Amazon paper, yes. I have been successful using these mediums on Amazon paper, but I'm very, very consciously aware at all times of my water content, or I don't know if that's the word, but how much water I'm using. And so when you first start using these mediums, I encourage you to use good paper. Use Hannah Carlson, Joanna Basford, Rita Berman. These books, and those aren't the only ones, but those are the ones off the top of my head, have thicker paper, and you're able to learn better the feel of them so that you can be mindful when you go to a thinner paper. But if I were to get crazy and go in with this right now and want to add another layer to this, there's a good chance it would bleed through because this paper is still damp. Even the sky probably isn't dry enough to add that second layer. If you have a doubt, you can use a hairdryer, you can use a heat gun, but go in and make sure that it's bone dry before you add any second layer. And tap off your brush frequently. Now you have to have enough water to activate the pigment, because that's what makes it work. But just be aware of that. Okay, so here I'm going in with this bright orange. Now, in the second layer, I am going to use that same red that you just saw me use on the rest of the buildings. But by adding this base layer with this bright orange, the vibrancy of the orange and the lightness is going to shine through my second layer. It's going to alter the color enough to just add a little variance. But because I am using that red, it's going to tie it together. So the light orange is going to bring the variation in color, and the darker red that I use on the buildings is going to add consistency to the page, which in turn will make the page feel cohesive. Now here I just realized I had missed a little bit. So I'm just kind of tidying up those little areas that I hadn't colored. Okay, next up I'm going to add in kind of an orange red here, a little lighter than the red, but a little darker than that tint. And basically what I'm doing here, I mean, in terms of a color wheel, this picture has orange and blue, which are complementary colors, and red and green, which are complementary colors. And this is known as I think it's called tetradic color scheme. But basically it's like a rectangle. Now, I don't actually pull out a color wheel and work. I just kind of go by what I like. And I think that whenever you can keep your colors similar to each other, you're better off. Now, I'm someone that, if you guys have ever done a color along with me, you know I am not a 12% or a 6 pencil color along person. I like all the colors, but what you're going to find is I tend to stay within color families. So here you have the red oranges and then the blues and the greens, but I'm not adding purple, and I'm not adding pink and mauve and, a bunch of different colors. I keep the colors that I have, and I use variations of those colors. Specifically, if I can even add the colors that I'm using in combination with each other to create new colors. So for example, with that tint, adding the red from the buildings to the tint, or in the case of these curtains, I will add the red from the buildings to the curtains as well. But once again, you see me starting with the lighter shades and working my way up. And then when I go into the dark, making sure I tap off so as to not just pull all that dark into that light orange. And there I started with the dark, but you see I didn't go very far before I tapped it off and then started with the light. So you just have to be mindful that you don't draw those darker colors, into your picture and let it overpower the entire picture, because they definitely can take over quickly. Water control is something that, you're constantly working with to try and control. And after you've done this a few times, you're going to get a feel for it. Also, not all water brushes are equal. This one's just a cheapo that I have, but I like it. It works really well to not give me too much water. There are certain water brushes that kind of just, they put too much water out. And then there are some where you really got to struggle to get the water to come out. I really like Pentel Aquash water brushes. That's probably my favorite. And they come in a variety of sizes. And it really depends on the area that you're working. In something like these sizes, I like the smaller ones. But if you're doing a big background, you're going to want to use a little bit larger brush, because if you struggle to get enough water out on the page and your pigment dries, it can leave little blobs of pigment, which is not what you want either. So see which one works the best for you. But I've had really good luck with those Pentel Aquashes. It's probably the most consistently good water brush that I have found. I have different ones. I have the Arteza ones. I have a, what is it, Fujiyama or something. Oh, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's not, but I have a koi water brush. I have a bunch of different ones. Just get what you can find, but play around with it and see if it's a really juicy one. You're going to have to tap off on your paper towel before you start, to where you're limiting the amount of water. Now, these are two colors that I used in the sky. It's the darkest and the lightest because I wanted a big contrast here. I feel like it makes it more vibrant. Not vibrant. I don't know, engaging maybe. And I prefer to work one color. So like I could have put all the colors down and then used my water brush. In other words, put all the light on and then put all the dark on and then use the water brush like I did with the sky. But I tend to do one color at a time if I don't want the colors to blend. If I'm like in the sky, I kind of wanted them to blend into a gradient. So I wanted to lay all my colors down and then wet it with the water. When I'm doing these stripes, I want each of those colors to be separate. So I am going in and I put in all the light, activate it, and then go in, put in all the dark, and activate it. Here I saw that I missed a little piece of that sky, kind of popping through the arch of that building. Maybe that's not an arch. That could have been part of the building, so maybe I should have colored that red. I'm not sure. But, you know, in Jazzy Doodle form, you see I missed this piece of the curtain. So here I am back to repeat my steps with this little piece. It just wouldn't be a color along without me missing something. If you know, you know. Those that are veterans of the channel are probably giggling right now because they saw it coming a mile ago. Now, Inktense, camels are supposed to be light brown. That saddle brown that I used in the building is probably would have been a really good color for the camels. So let me tell you why I'm using this more yellowish color. It's not ideal. In an ideal world, I would have used a different color on the building and that saddle brown on my camel. But the reason I didn't is because Inktense doesn't have huge quantities of browns. They have quite a few in the yellow-brown range, like this tan, amber, mustard. All of those are fairly similar, like ochre kind of colors. But then you have the saddle brown, and then it gets into much darker colors like oak and sepia, which are more like really dark browns. And I needed more contrast in my buildings. I guess maybe I should have used the tan on the buildings and the saddle brown on the camels. But my other thinking was the willow color that I use for the sand, there isn't as big a contrast between willow and saddle brown. And I felt like my camels would have blended too much in with the dirt. Now, you can always go over your Inktense with colored pencil. That is always an option. So, and don't freak out when you see this yellow or this tan that looks yellow right now. We are going to go over it with the saddle brown and make it a little more tan and a little less yellow, because right now you're like, Wendy, what are you doing? Your camels look jaundiced. But don't worry, their livers are fine. We'll fix it. But yeah, the camels haven't been drinking the Kool-Aid. They've been drinking water, so we're okay. But anyway, so what I was saying is you can go over it with colored pencil. I just felt like I wanted this picture to just be Inktense. I wanted to see what I could do and not use colored pencil. I only use one colored pencil, and that's when I do the smoke, just to kind of go over my Posca so it's not really bright white. But you'll see now I'm leaving those camels to dry before I move on and add another layer to them. Now here, this is the lightest green. And I'm not going all the way to the edge because I want the cactus to have a little lighter green than even what I'm using right now. So I'm going to drag that color to the edge. And by doing that, it'll dilute it a little bit and I'll get that lighter green color there on the side. And what I'm going to do, well, first I'm going to go in and put my other greens in. So these are darker greens, and I'm just adding a little bit to that right-hand side. And then I'm going to go in with an even darker green and just right on the edge, I'm going to darken that side, just to add a little dimension. And then when I blend it all out, you'll see that it blends really nicely and does a lot of the gradient making for us. That's kind of the nice thing about Inktense. Now here you see I start in the clear, and depending on how green you know, how, like, see there on the bottom, how much darker it was because I didn't start with the non-colored side. I kind of drew that darker color into it. And I'm fine with that. You want variance when you color. There I kind of colored over that side and didn't, so there the center one is a little darker. I think it just looks better to have that variance. And you can see I'm kind of tapping off. I learned my lesson. There you see me actually testing. Like, is it dry? Like, can I go in with my next color? So here you can see this is that red that we had in the building. And I'm just going over the side here. And then just that middle segment, I'll color with this darker color. Just for some variety, right? Just to add a little difference. Now you can see that it has a little bit more of an orangier cast than the buildings. A little brightness maybe, but it's not enough that when you look at the page, you don't necessarily think it's a different color. Like it blends in nicely. But it's enough that it just changes the look a little. Now here I'm just making some of these stained glass and the windows this yellow color. And you'll see me kind of pause and look around the page and just see what all do I want to have this bright shiny yellow. Because this is going to be kind of a highlight color. So when I can, I use it all at once. But you'll find I don't always. Because sometimes I just don't know. A lot of times when I'm coloring pictures, I've got some of the idea planned out, but not all of it. And I just wait and see what the page needs when more of it is done. And then I say, oh, you know what it could use a little more of? Blue. Or you know what else it could use a little more of? Pops of yellow. So that's kind of how I do things. Now, once we've done the first layer and we go to the second layer, I'm going to chat you up about some fun facts about camels. Because when I was trying to figure out where this picture was in the book, it just says South Africa. Now, some of the pages are very much like a famous place or something like that I can look up. This one really didn't have much. So I started thinking about camels. So I started Googling it, and I learned some really fun facts about camels. So we'll chat about those when we're doing our second layer, because it's basically going to kind of repeat a lot of what I'm doing now. And I will say this, you don't have to do a second layer. You might get done with this first layer and say, I like my picture. Maybe you have a heavier hand than I do. Maybe you like your pictures a little lighter than I do. These are yours, so do with it what you want. If you want to not go over it again with Inktense, that's fine. You could use colored pencil and do the same thing. Now, because I've introduced the blues, I thought maybe I wanted to pull in some blue in the bottom half of my picture. So as I do these color alongs, my goal is always to give you an insight into my mind without making you crazy. I can't clue you into my total brain, because then you would all run screaming from the room. But my idea is to try and teach you why, not teach you, tell you why I do the things that I do. You may look at it and be like, well, that's great that that's why you did it, but I don't like it. So I would encourage you to, make it yours, do whatever you want. Everything that I show you that I do, you may find another way that works better for you. And that's fine. I'm cool with that. And I would love to learn that, because there are times when I won't use Inktense the way I am right now. Sometimes I scratch it off on a palette and put it on with a water brush. It just really depends on the look I'm going for. Usually when I do that, my colors aren't nearly as vibrant, which is fine, because sometimes I use Inktense just to base a page, get some color on the paper, and make it to where there's no more white, so my colored pencils don't have to work as hard. And that's the only role I want my Inktense to play. In this case, I want them to be the medium. I want them to be the only medium. So I find applying it directly to paper works best for that. But I encourage you to use the method that works best for you. But I also encourage you to try new ways of doing things. Sometimes I'll do something a certain way, and then I'll run across a channel that does it differently, and I think to myself, why the heck didn't I think of that? Like, that's brilliant. Or sometimes I'll think, why are they doing that? That's weird. So I force myself to literally do it the way they're doing it. And sometimes I still feel like, well, that's weird. But oftentimes I'm like, oh, that makes sense now. Or I will adapt what they've done, and I'll kind of do a hybrid of how I've been doing it along with how they're doing it. And that creates a really good solution. But the main goal is have fun. Have fun with your books. Try something new. And, it's only paper, right? Sorry, long pause there. Sometimes I just don't know what to say. Now here's where I'm going to go in and color all the sand. And this is a little redder probably than I picture the desert in my mind. But I don't care. I feel like it works with my picture. And really, that's all I care about, because, Saudi Arabia is not going to call me up and tell me that I messed this all up. I don't think Africa is going to call me and be like, our sand is not that color. How dare you? And if they do, I would be excited. I'd be like, oh my gosh, somebody in Africa saw my picture. I would be thrilled. And I'd be happy to color a new one for them. But until that happens, I'm going to go with what's working for the picture I'm coloring. And once again, note how dull this pencil is. Now, there's going to be some times at the end, like when I colored those little, the little dealy-mabobs hanging from the coat on the camel's back, the little dangly bits, I will sharpen my pencil to get in there, because, the blunter it is, the wider the diameter of your pencil is. So I need a little pointier tip in order to get those little tiny dangly bits. But for this big background, I find that a really dull pencil really works well. Because the risk you run with Inktense with pointy tips is you can kind of gouge your paper a little bit or put too thick of a mark down, and it can make it a little harder to dissolve, though Inktense is really nice. It dissolves easily, but it can, if you do gouge your paper, meaning like actually indent the paper, that can definitely change the look because the ink will kind of pool in that little valley, so to speak, and you can run into, not liking how it looks. Okay, while I'm wetting all the sand, let's talk about camels, shall we? So maybe it's just me, but I've always heard that camels store water in their humps. Well, this is not true. They actually store fat in their humps. And they're born without a hump because they don't actually develop it until they start eating like real food, right? And as they deplete that fat store, like let's say that they're out on a journey and they are unable to eat, they will use that fat storage for energy. And that will cause their little hump to kind of droop a little bit. They actually store their water in their blood. So more on that later. So those humps actually help regulate their body temperature as well by, I guess, giving them more surface area to the air. But they actually store water in their blood. And they're the only animal that does this. But their blood cells are actually oval and they're smaller. And they absorb up to 240% of their regular size, which allows them to drink 30 gallons of water in 10 minutes. Like, y'all. Yeah, that is crazy to think about that. And they're the only animal that can do this. Any other animal that drank that much, their cells would burst. But this allows them to travel up to like 20 miles a day and like really be out in these really arid, dry conditions. So like I said, they're born without humps. They're often born white, and they can fully walk within a half an hour of birth. So that's kind of crazy. Their milk is extremely nutritious, and a lot of nomadic cultures in desert areas rely on camel's milk for nutrients. And they use, in Kazakhstan, they actually use it to help treat illnesses such as tuberculosis. So that's kind of crazy. Like, I didn't know that. Now here I'm just going in and darkening all like the doorways and the tent and things like that. So there are two types of camels in the world. The first one is called a dromedary, and it has one hump. And then the other one, what are they called? Bactrian camels that have two. Now, the dromedaries are known as Arabian camels and are found in northern Africa, the Middle East, part of Asia, and the Indian subcontinent, while the two-hump camels can only be found in inner, central, and eastern Asia, which I didn't know that either. I thought, I don't know. I guess I thought I don't know what I thought. Maybe I never really thought about camels. That's probably the truth. But dromedaries, the one-hump camels, make up 90% of the world's population of camels, with all of them being domesticated. So there's no wild dromedaries out there. Like, never thought about that either. So, but the two-hump camels are both domestic and wild. And the two-hump camels, and I'm just going to call them that because y'all know that I can't pronounce anything. The two-hump camels stand between 5 and 6 feet tall and are about 10 to 11 and a half feet long and weigh about 990 to 1,100 pounds. The one-hump camel, their length ranges from 7 to 11 feet, and their height is between 5.9 and 6.5 feet, and they weigh somewhere between 880 and 1,320 pounds. Camels can live to be about 50 years. They don't really have any natural predators. So the second reason that they're able to live that long is they're capable of storing water and fat in their bodies for a really long time. So they can go a really long time without eating or drinking, even weeks to months. That is crazy to think about. This one was a surprising fact to me. Camels can run up to 40 miles an hour. That's fast, guys. So for perspective, a greyhound dog, which I think is the fastest dog that we have, can only run 45 miles an hour. And a cheetah runs 60 to 80 miles an hour. So while camels obviously aren't as fast as cheetahs, they're dang near as fast as the fastest dog. That is wild to me. I had no idea. They walk about 2 to 3 miles an hour, trot at 9 to 10 miles an hour, and jog at 16 miles an hour. And in some places, they actually have camel races. Well, of course they do. So there are 160 words for camel in the Arabic language. A lot of these describe the camels in minute details, like a camel that drinks once every 3 days versus a female camel in the middle of a herd of camels. And then yet another word for a camel that loves to escape and is difficult to catch. Okay, so I won't be learning Arabic anytime soon, I can tell you that. And when you actually translate the word camel, it actually means beauty in Arabic. Here's another wild fact to me. The most expensive camel was sold for, are you ready for it? What do you think? Pick a number in your head. Let me know in the comments how close you were. $53 million. Wow. Like, who bought said camel? Okay, so now, speaking of camels, now that my camel's completely dry, I'm going back in with that saddle brown because these camels, they look like they had liver problems, right? Like they were jaundiced. So we got to add a little brown in there just to tan them up a little bit. Literally tan them. Yeah, I just thought they were too yellow, so I went in with that brown and added that back in just on the darkest spot, leaving the lighter spots. Now, as we get along, in case I'm chatting about how expensive the camels were, I am going to do a tip to Inktense method to put a little bit of a light yellow or tan or brown, whatever you want to call it, into the belly region. I like the white look. I just felt like it looked uncolored, but I wanted it really light. So that's why I did it that way. Okay, so a camel named Arnoun was reportedly sold at an auction in Kuwait in 2019 for 200 million Saudi riyals, which is about $53 million. I'm sure I'm saying the Saudi currency wrong too. So that camel took first place in the category of stallions at the third King Abdulaziz Camel Festival in Saudi Arabia. If y'all are Arabic and, you're cringing at my pronunciation, I'll just say I'm sorry now. In the United Arab Emirates, they actually have camel festivals, which are really popular, in which thousands of camels compete for the crown. Camels and llamas are cousins. They also belonging are alpacas, guanacos, and vacunas. I don't know. Shoot me now. Why do I do this to myself? They're very social animals. You won't see them traveling solo in the wild. They like to travel in herds. A herd usually consists of a dominant adult male, females, and their young males that have been chased out of a group. Let me say that again. Males that have been chased out of the group have been known to form eligible herds. Camels will actually talk to each other too. They communicate through sounds like bellows and moans. They'll blow on each other's faces as friendly greeting. In camel society, different positions for the head, neck, and ears and tail all have different meanings. So as far as what I'm doing on the page here, I just felt like I needed more pop on the page, right? Just having all the sand, one color wasn't really doing it for me. So I wanted to make some of these areas darker. And then since you've seen the finished product, you know that I also add the little white dots and stuff. This is all just for some visual interest. But once again, you'll note that I waited until the page was completely dry before adding the dark, or the next layer, so to speak. So, back to our camels. Camels spit. They do this when they feel threatened. So, it's actually more of a vomit than a spit, which is really gross if you think about it. The longest recorded distance is 121 feet. Okay, guys. What? A camel can spit that far? That is insane. So, camels have large, flat feet to help them walk in the sand, and the soles of their feet have a large surface area to stop them from sinking into the sand. They have slit-like sealable nostrils to prevent the sand from getting up their nose, as well as 2 rows of eyelashes. Well, what was God thinking? I mean, I understand he's got to protect the camel's eye, but couldn't he have given us ladies 2 rows of eyelashes? Just saying. Just saying. They also can tolerate body temperatures up to 107 degrees Fahrenheit. That's crazy. Camels survive mostly on dried grass and the scarce vegetation that they see, but they can even eat twigs, bushes, date stones, and even cactus. They like plants that are rich in salt, and they have a thick, leathery lining that allows them to eat rough and thorny plants. Camel meat itself is considered a delicacy. In Middle Eastern countries, people eat camel meat, and the hump is said to be the best part of the camel. Well, yeah, that's where all the fat is. That makes sense to me. It's traditionally served at Arab weddings, and the taste of camel is best described as similar. No, not chicken. I know y'all were thinking it. Beef. So that is some little tidbits about camels that I learned. Okay, so checking another site, it says here that camels have 3 sets of eyelids and 2 rows of eyelashes. They have thick lips that let them forage for thorny plants. They can sit directly on the hot sand. Their humps let them store up to 80 pounds of fat, which they can live on for weeks or months. So we didn't know the 80 pounds. That's crazy. This says that they can carry up to 900 pounds for 25 miles a day. Wow. I need to get me a camel. Mothers, but I wouldn't want to be a camel. Mothers have to carry their calves for 14 months before giving birth. Yeah, that's a no. So, just another few fun facts about the camels. So, what are you thinking about our page so far? Are you liking it? And once again, looking at the page, I feel like you could totally stop after one layer. I think the page would look perfectly fine. And like I said, you could go in with colored pencils if you don't want to do another Inktense layer. But I just decided that I wanted that extra layer because I wanted to challenge myself not to use colored pencil. So here, once again, I'm just going in and saying, okay, what color do I need? What color should this be? And looking around the page and just seeing how to tie it all together. I like the little pops of pink. It's a little pinker than the red that we used. I could have used the exact same red. I feel like the pink is just enough to give it a little visual interest, but not enough to really make the page feel busy, right? Because it's almost the same red. It just has a little pinker tone to it. Okay, guys, so I ran out of camel facts. I guess there's only so much you could learn about the camels. I'm sure there's more. But I think I'm going to set the rest of this to music because we've got about another 45 minutes. Now, at this point, I am just finishing up the little bits and bobs down here on the camel's back, his little cargo thing. I'm going to finish up the parts of the buildings that aren't colored, and then you could take a look at it and see if you want to call it a wrap or if you want to color it again. But then maybe what I'll do is go ahead and speed up the second half of this video. Okay, so I changed my mind and I've decided I'm going to keep the color along the entirety at 2 times speed. That way, if you are coloring along and you want to do the second layer, it's exactly the same as, the first time in terms of speed. And I'm going to set the rest of this to music, and then I'll catch you when I pick up the white jelly roll. Okay, if you're still with me, thank you so much for sticking it out. Let me know in the comments what you think. Did the second layer, do you like the effects, or do you like it better with the lighter colors? I feel like this page is a lot warmer, but I felt like the sand was a nice lighter as well. So I have kind of mixed thoughts on it. But, you know, this is how you do things. You try them and you see if you like them. But anyway, I decided that I just wanted to add a little zhuzh to my page. So I'm going to zhuzh it up using the white on the little cactus pokey things. I feel like it adds some visual interest. And pretty much when I add white, it's just wherever the heck I feel like it. I don't necessarily have, when you add white like this, especially with like a jelly roll or something like that, it's pretty stark. And so if you're going for the ultra realistic look, this isn't how you go about it. But none of this page to me is what I would call realistic. So I just do whatever I fancy. So I'm going over the little dots here on the blanket wherever there was a little black dot. Now, I also go and add a white dot in the circle there of where the yellow rectangle is, in the square. Does that even make sense? I hope you're following me. And I debated on it, and then I did it. And when I got it all done, I was like, I don't know if I like that. And so I leave it there for a few minutes because, of course, you got to let it dry. And then I decided, did I want to put white on like these little flowers? And I decided not to. So here I'm just adding some white to these little leaves or whatever they are. You could add a little white dot to each of the little dangly bits. There's really, like I said, no right or wrong place to put the white. It's wherever you fancy. Now, I tend to put it where I feel like there would be a little reflection. Now, here what I'm doing is I'm putting it in the center of the yellow and kind of tapping it because I don't want like a pop of white, like a dot, but I want it to be a little lighter in the center to make it kind of look glowy. And I apologize, I'm a little out of camera there. You didn't miss much. I just put the little 3 dots in. But like here, I think about it and I decide, no, I want those little black dots back in there. Now, I don't completely obscure the white. So I wasn't trying to cover the white completely. I just put it just kind of in the center of the white. And I had to tap my pen a couple of times. Here I'm just kind of adding little black dots to that little camel lace thing. And here just stippling on my rocks just for a little texture, just kind of in the shadowy parts, just for some visual interest. I like the way that looks. So now I'm back to my white and I decide I want more highlight. And so I decide to do the crown of all of the little hills. So anywhere I feel like the mound of sand is, I'm putting in my white dots just along the edge there. Once again, just because I fancy it. You can leave the step out. I think it adds a little something something. But like I said, if you don't like it, don't put it in, because it's definitely, I don't know, different. Also, make sure your little dots are dry before you move on, or you will smear them. Now this jelly roll kind of, it dries pretty quick, but I'm just saying, like, you can't be putting stuff on the right-hand side of the page and then putting your hand in it. Here I'm making little dash marks along the tent. Now, if you feel like they're too bright, wait for them to completely dry and then go over them with a colored pencil. And you can kind of push them back a little bit, but still have that vibrancy coming through, like a little highlight. Kind of like, you know, the other, I mean, it doesn't really work with the dashes, but here when I put these in, if I feel like they're popping out too much, I just kind of tap my finger on them a little bit. But I just want to add a little visual interest here. Once again, this is just whatever you fancy. Here I'm taking that colored pencil, and you can see it just knocks back that white a little bit to where it's not jumping off the page. But this is the end, so thank you so much for following along with me. If you made it to the end, let me know in the comments, and I'll give you, some extra emojis, because you really are a superstar. I appreciate you all, and until next time, take care. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.